Hello, welcome to We Speak Dispatch. I'm John here with Leslie, Joe, and Doug. Our roundtable discussion will offer some different perspectives and opinions and new ideas in the dispatch world. So today's topic's kind of interesting because we're going to be talking about ride-alongs, and a lot of us, due to the state of world affairs, they have kind of been suspended now, be it with police and fire departments.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
A lot of us participate in at some point, whether it be in training or outside of training, on duty or off duty kind of thing. And when we talk about ride-alongs, a lot of times the first thing that comes to people's mind is, well, it's a free day outside and I get paid for it. But really the purpose should be something more than that. And that's what this discussion is really going to focus on. And it's to learn what responders do, what they see, what they face when waiting for a dispatch, while they're en route to a call, when they get on scene, and also the closure. You know, do they have to transport somebody? Do they have to follow an apparatus if it's a medical run with law enforcement component? Just all those different kinds of things. So to open it all up, we look at kind of both sides of the house, where first, and we'll start with this, is where we get to act like a provider. And that kind of, I look at that like, you know, we get to go in the field. We get to go and maybe wear that stethoscope, or we get to be like Boss Hogg or some other character that, or like Police Academy, whatever law enforcement movie or character you want to emulate. You know, you think you're with the big guns. You're like, oh, shots fired, I'll be under the hood. So you know, it just depends. But if we take ourselves out of the dispatch center, when do y'all's dispatchers get to go on ride-alongs? Let's start there.
Okay.
Joe?
Our dispatchers, I ask them if they want to go during their training probation period, about 3 months, 4 months in, because that way they have an understanding of dispatch and what they're listening for. And then they get to go out and listen to other people's volume and other people's how quickly they talk on the radio, how softly, loud, etc. And so about 3 to 4 months in, and then we allow it annually as well. But the interesting thing with ride-alongs is we also offer it with our fire department as well.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
That is cool. That's very
cool.
cool.
To go, they get to see both sides because you dispatch for police and fire.
Yeah, and then we take the medical calls as well. So they get to do an annual ride-along unless it's suspended for any reason. But they get to do an annual one with the fire department and the police department.
Wow, that's great. I would love to do that myself.
Yeah.
Leslie, what about y'all?
So we have a ride-along process that happens during training. And I will openly and admit that I stole some ideas from Doug when it came to our ride-alongs, because up until maybe within the last 5 years, it truly was like you talked about, John. Hey, I get to go outside for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever. And they were kind of at the mercy of the calls for service that the officer responded on. And now we give them worksheets that they have to fill out. So we can ensure that some type of learning that's relevant to dispatch is happening. So, you know, things like, you know, what are the tactical pieces of equipment they use? You know, take a picture of it. Ask the officer when they're doing a proactive stop in the field, what are they looking at and what do they expect the dispatcher to do in that situation? So that happens in training. And then usually it's just whenever a dispatcher wants to go on a ride-along.
Wow. That's
yeah.
cool.
It's, you know, if it doesn't impact staffing in a negative way, and if you want to go out, there's that little detail. So never.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we allow it, but not really.
Not really. Because there's a lot of new development and building and things like that happens. You know, officers will call out traffic on a street and you're like, I never heard that street before. So if it doesn't negatively impact staffing, go have at it. Get out of the room for a little bit.
Yeah.
What about you, Doug? Since I stole stuff from you.
Well, because I had a really bad experience. My first ride along was in South Los Angeles, And I went to roll call as a brand new dispatcher. I'm standing in roll call with all these officers and sergeant up front doing his stuff. And he finishes what he's talking about, and he closes his book and says, "Hey, who wants to take that new dispatcher on a ride along?" And I felt really welcomed. Not. And I heard every excuse of why they couldn't take me. It was like, "No, we're busy. We got these things to do." And it was like, oh my God, I hated them. And then later on, we developed this way of kind of making that ride along interactive between the dispatcher and the officer, because if we sent the dispatcher out with an officer and they didn't have any preparation, the officer would say, "What do you want to see?" The new person would be like, "I don't know, whatever." And it's like, yeah, I know. Yes.
Can you please tell that story?
Which one?
The fountain story.
I knew she was going there.
Anyway, so I went on a ride along in this area that we dispatched for that had mountains, and this is serious mountains. These are where it snows, these are ski resorts, all this stuff. And the one road up there is a very windy road that goes up, and we had a list of landmarks dispatchers could see on their way up there. So if somebody calls and says, "Hey, I'm lost, but I see this sign," we knew where they were at. We could say, "Okay, I got this sheet of paper." Well, I went on a ride along myself up there, one of the officers, and I said, "Hey, on this list, we show these things: first fountain, second fountain, third fountain." And he goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Can we see them?" Because I came from LA, so I'm thinking fountains like
Bellagio.
Yes, I was going to say. Was there music with those fountains?
I thought there might be. And so we're driving up this very windy road at extreme high speeds, and he pulls in this dirt turnout, and he points this old water spigot in the wall over there, and he goes, "There's fountain number 1." And I'm like, oh my God. And he goes, "Wait till you see fountain number 2. And we drive another like 10 miles on this windy, very narrow road, very high speeds, which made me quite sick. And so we pull into this next turnout, and he goes, "See that hole in the wall over there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's fountain number 2. I said, "There's not even a spigot there." He goes, "Oh yeah, there hasn't been one there in like 10 years. I'm like, oh my God. I get back to the comm center, and I'm telling everybody, oh my God, people, that thing that says first fountain, second fountain, third fountain, there's no fountains. There's no fountains. But it's like, and everybody's like, "No way." And I'm like, oh my God. We had to go up and take pictures and bring them back and show people, because I can't tell you how many people I probably got lost up in the mountains that were like, "We don't know where we are." And I'm like, "Look for a fountain, big, huge."
I love that story.
What?
Well,
Now, the kicker is, were they a commonplace or a landmark in the CAD system? So if people said fountain, you could enter it and it would give selections of different fountain.
You could put in the highway number at a fountain, and it would take it and give you the, well, we didn't have geo back then, but it would take it.
It would verify.
Yeah, you can look at a map and say, there it is. But it's like, we had them marked because nobody really went on that ride along, because it was just so difficult to get an officer to come all the way down the mountain and then take you all the way back up. And they like to go extremely fast on these corners that were extremely tight. And I didn't go again.
That's funny.
but I think that's such a huge learning point, that how many of our agencies have the commonplace name of the business that it used to be 25 years ago. You know, nobody on staff remembers it being the candy store, but they still call it the candy store. And it, you know, it's now an open field or an apartment complex or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things that I took from Doug, is getting a list of all of those commonplace names that officers use and sending them out to see them. So they're not using it as a landmark to give people directions. That probably still people in the mountain for those
the last year or so I was there, we had the new people in a little classroom setting for us, and we had them draw our entire county, just a really rough drawing, and draw the big streets in there and say, "What's at this location?" We had this place called Wood Chopper, which there was back in the 70s. There was a place where they used to chop wood for people, but it hadn't been there for 25 years.
Right.
But our officer still said, "I'm north of Chopper, south of Chopper," and you're like, "Okay, got it." Twin Oaks. We had them draw this whole map, and they'd take a picture of it. And then they go out on the road with the officer, and they're like, "Can we see where this is at?" And then they get to connect that picture with that thing, and bang, there it is.
So, John, I'm curious, do you do something like this at your agency?
Yeah, we encourage it after recruits are done the academy and they're on an operations team, to participate in at least one police and one fire ride along. And
you guys get on fire too?
Probably stole from Doug too.
One of the things that I would recommend too with ride-alongs is if your CAD, when it gets upgraded, if it has an impact on the MDCs for the officers, one of the things I did this last time is I went out with the officers before we upgraded anything, and I just said, what is it that you really like that works well? And I went out with different shifts, you know, in the daytime and then at night, because sometimes the brightness of the computer for them is different. And I took some notes, and then we upgraded it, and I went back out, and nobody likes change. So you have to have, you know, big shoulders, because they're going to be upset about the upgrade at first. And you're going to hear about the things that they don't like. But when you're talking to them, if they can do a CAD flow that has no impact on the dispatcher, or a positive impact on the dispatcher that also benefits the other side of the radio, and we were able to make some of those changes because I got a better understanding of the computer and how it worked on their end from our end. And we made some progress on our last upgrade that started off a little bit rough.
Well, let me tell you,
go ahead.
a while ago. Hold on one second. This is good. When we send our people out, we tell them, ask the officer how to use the radio in the car. Because our radios are really complicated, like I'm sure all of yours are too.
The CB one?
What's that?
The CB?
The CB. Well, we
breaker 1.9.
my first ride along, we did have a CB, but I don't talk about it. But so we tell them look at the radio, because we've had a couple of terrible incidents where an officer was murdered and another officer was beat up, and a citizen got on the radio, and if our dispatcher didn't know how to tell them, push this button to talk to me and let it up, whatever, if they had no clue to work these complicated radios, they'd be in trouble. Right. And that's why I think it's so important to get them out there looking at that stuff that they may have to use at one point or another.
Yeah. We keep the officer's fleet map of their portable radio taped to our consoles, because a lot of times they'll say, you know, respond on this channel that they don't normally use. And so we are able to glance and be like, yeah, it's C11. And then the officer switches to C11 on their portable radio.
You have different radio channels? Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
What a
we
concept.
have plenty of them. The good thing is we have radios like you, Joe. We don't have it taped to the console, but when someone keys up on our radio system monitor, it shows their like employee number, badge,
same here,
and their name.
That's
so
coming from my agency. That's
reference at the roster that we
5 years down the line.
Station
right.
with that, and be like, okay, it's John talking.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Doug, you still got clicking at your agency or no?
You know what? Just leave us alone, okay? We don't have that technology that you all are talking about. We just
squelch,
don't have it.
Joe. It's squelch.
Yeah.
Squelch.
Rub it on your pants, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They kept telling us it's coming, but it's difficult because we just barely got, in the last couple of years, got AVL on the patrol cars, automatic vehicle locator, and that was having problems because some people, I'm just saying, some people turned it off in the car. They didn't want us to know where they were at. So,
well, I'm curious
go ahead.
with what you brought up, John. You know, obviously, we all agree that there's a benefit to having a ride-along program. So, what would you do? How would you, for the people who may be watching, who are like, we don't have a ride-along program, how do we implement something like that? What would be a suggestion that you would have to someone who wants to get something like this started? How do you move forward with this? Because we don't disagree. There's definitely a benefit, but how do you start the ball rolling?
You know, I kind of stumbled into it. We always had it at my agency as some kind of what I'll just say benefit, for lack of a better word. It's always just been there. I think to start out, it would, within the dispatch center, go through the chain of command and partner with the agencies that you dispatch for, and kind of director to chief level, and say, hey, this is what we want to do, and really list out the benefits of what we want to accomplish.
Right.
This isn't just, hey, I want to see who I'm talking to and put a face with a voice.
Right.
I want to go see. And when we send people, like we were talking about, we all work different shifts, is I want midnight folks to go out and ride at night, because those are the kinds of landmarks and descriptors they are going to hear about, not those during the day.
Right.
Does anyone else here have a newer program out or revise their program?
We just added the sheets. Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, same thing. I was just going to say that one of the things when I send out the new person that I look for is I'll ask them, what's your strong suit at knowing our city? And if they're strong on the north side or the south side or the east side or the west side, doesn't matter. If they're stronger over there, I'm going to put them in their weaker area.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
let them try to learn that area a little bit more while they're out riding along. So one of the things I really focus on for our ride-alongs is geography.
Yep. Yeah.
I think that's the number one benefit from it.
Right. And I think our dispatchers, depending on what level of experience they come to you with, some of our brand new employees, they've never been in law enforcement or public safety before. So we would have them go on a ride along just to see how their piece of the puzzle played in the big picture of public safety. So maybe, you know, this call that they took 2 hours ago, and kind of follow the progression of where it went after that, so they could get an idea of where they fit in the big picture. And it was very helpful. And then having conversations with the officers about officer safety and why we ask certain questions and how those officers use that information has been.
I know that I know when we changed our ride-along policy to add those questions and all that stuff, we did it. It really made a difference to not just the dispatchers who were learning a lot, but to the officers who were in the car going, damn, it's great to have somebody asking questions. Why do we do this? Why are we saying that?
Yeah.
These kind of things. And it
There's
was
a level of engagement, really.
Oh yeah, and they just loved it. And you know, I mean, officers love to talk about themselves anyway. Just kidding. But but I mean, it's nice to have them come in and say, can we take somebody on a ride along? I mean, they wanted to do it. They felt like it's so good. They want to have that happen. And I think they're a very valuable tool that you should be using correctly.
Yeah.
So
And the other,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I do it two ways as well, Doug, is I also ask the officer, do you have any questions about how we do things and why we do things the way that we do, why I'm out there to let them, and they always say when I first get in, nope, no questions. But then as we drive down the road and they see something that jogs there. So just when you ask the question, don't give up, because they're going to have those questions as the ride along goes on, but they may not be prepared for it right away. And it's been a great exchange of ideas on all of them that I've ever done.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're talking about us going into the field. Do you all have responders come in and sit under the headset?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. And
Not enough.
We do
not enough.
We do it in 2 phases. So when they're first in training, but life's coming at them way too fast. But that's where we kind of
call. I don't care about sitting with them.
Yeah. So, and we kind of talk to them about, you know, when you run somebody, put it in this order, you know, that sort of thing. So they know, and just so they can understand, because a lot of our officers too, kind of like our public, thinks, well, if you're talking to me on the phone, you're not dispatching officers. So they get a chance to see how the room works. But then right before they get released, we have them come back. And this time we put them on the radio, we put them on the phone.
On the radio and phone?
Yeah, we'll type for them because they can't manipulate our CAD, but they're talking. And you know, and there's nothing better than to tell the officer, put them on hold, put them on hold, put them on hold, put them on hold, and then pick up the other line, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, and you and so now when we say, hey, I'm busy, stand by, I've got a 911 line, they go, oh yeah, I know what that like, yeah, that sucks, and it builds that, So it's been
one of the offices I worked at, we did do that. They don't do it a lot, I'm telling you right now, but one of them we had to, because we had a new officer at one of the areas I was at who used to scream like a banshee on the radio. They had the lapel mic, and he would just scream. And we're like, oh my God, this guy. So I called him one day and I said, hey, can you stop by the dispatch center? And he's like, for what? And I'm like, we want to talk to you. And he's brand new, so he was kind of like scared anyway. So he came in and I said, I want to play you some tapes. So I played the tapes and he's like, I sound terrible. And I'm like, why do you do that? And he said, my training officer said I need to yell because you guys can't hear when I'm on the highway. I'm like, we can hear just fine. Those things work.
we can hear just fine.
I felt bad for him because he thought he was doing something right, and he felt embarrassed. And he went on the floor and he was telling people, he said, I'm really sorry, I did that, I didn't mean to. And it was like, dude, we all make mistakes. Move on, man. It's like that was a office that was a little more like we could get the officers in there to do it. It's just sometimes difficult. I mean, they just don't want to do it. So
I think for
when you
John
leave today, just talk soft.
So big, yeah. It may be difficult for the larger agencies to be able to facilitate that exchange, but I think if you could do it, it's very beneficial.
Yeah, we'll have officers usually as part of their FTI. So probably say go with Leslie like early in their training where really they just want to run calls, and it's
Right.
their trainer was or their FTO was on a day off. So it's like, all right, I'll send you the dispatch kind of thing, or I'll send you to the heliport and the animal shelter and dispatch.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's not even like a full shift, or they can really immerse themselves
Mm-hmm.
more. The time has just gotten crunched over the years.
Right.
But they do sit on the phones, but not like you will. They'll actually handle the phone. But when they're on the police radio, to Joe's point, we'll put them on the radio. And gosh, is it fun to watch them stumble?
Oh,
I'm
Put 'em
gonna
on the
take it
radio?
back. I'm gonna take this back myself. I'm really glad I'm part of this because hearing you guys say that you do that, I'll
Yeah.
at least take it back. That's awesome.
you got to be able to sell it correctly, because I know one of the officers that we sold it, and they were like, that sounds like a good idea. And we had a lieutenant come in and sit at a console, and we told him, you're going to type. And he's like, oh my God, I don't remember how to type. We're like, you got it. Just sit up close. And he was like typing, and he was doing really good. We were like surprised, like, hey, you could be a dispatcher, give up that huge salary, but still.
Right.
Yeah. Now we don't. Let me clarify. When we put them on the radio, we don't just let them sit on a channel and go.
Oh, yeah.
Usually, we'll pull up an event and we'll dispatch and do the CAD commands because typically they wouldn't be able to keep up or know the commands to even execute
Yeah.
from the
Right.
terminal.
Right.
But it's funny to see the dispatchers kind of point on the screen. Okay, say this, then this, and look over here, and then do this, and
Right.
then click that. And sometimes on recording, you can hear the dispatcher whisper, "Okay, click this." Okay, say this. And it's right over the radio, and it's just
Yes.
like, okay.
Well, yeah.
And then you get all the messages, which is fun, from their colleagues, and then
Yes.
like, "Oh, John's up in dispatch today." Ooh.
Well, and it's especially because depending on the technology that you've got going on, like we have LPR cameras, so the
Oh, we
ALPR.
do, yeah.
Okay, so you're
License plate readers.
yes. So the license plate reader, you're sitting there, and the way ours is set up, which I'm sure is not correct, but so it automatically pops in front of your active screen. So you may be in the middle of something, a stolen vehicle pops up, you've got to very quickly move it off to the side, finish what you're doing, then run the plate and start to get that information. And officers are always like, dispatch is out of match, because they get it in their MCTs as well. And so for them to sit in and watch the 16-step process that we have to go through before we can run the plate, they're like, oh, okay, now I get it. So it's definitely been a benefit, and I
think
encourage anybody.
The whole ride-along
needs to have it.
experience, that
Mhm.
whole experience is good because I was fortunate. I worked for a very large state agency, and we had helicopters. And we could send our folks with the helicopters or the airplanes, one of the two, and they could go with those. And what they really learned on those was these pilots have to fly that damn thing and talk on probably 10 different radios.
Right.
They're
Unbelievable.
talking to air traffic control. They're talking to other agencies. They're talking
Before
all
they
these
even
things.
lift off.
Oh, yeah. And they're like, our dispatchers would come back so like, oh, my God, because they didn't realize how much stuff they had to talk on. And they were so busy doing everything else. They said, look, if we have to go down, like we're going to do a Mayday, you're going to get very little from us because we're busy. We're trying to figure out how to tell everybody around, like, oh, my God, we're going down. And they came back with a whole new understanding of, okay, these guys are busy. When they say stand by, they are busy. They're doing some stuff up there. So, but it's kind of a great experience. I would never do it, but it's kind of a great experience for people to go to these helicopters and go out there and risk their life. I would, but
Joe, do you have airplanes, helicopters, or drones at your agency that people can do ride-alongs with?
We have some drones, I think, and then our state agency also has an airplane, and we used to have some aircraft as well, but we do not anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, this was a great discussion about ride-alongs. Hopefully your agency either has a program or now you have some tools and tips on how to start one and maybe some things to consider on when to actually go participate. So thanks again for joining us today on We Speak Dispatch. We'd love to hear from you. So if you have a comment or a story idea, leave it below, or you can email us at wespeakdispatch@gmail.com. Take it easy, y'all. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
thank you.